So here, this default macro toolbar has some common actions. Like here's the zoom to select that we looked at in the last video or 2 videos ago, and I can hit Shift S to go back. And we can zoom to loop, and there's a few different commands, but we can customize all this. Now, if I right click in the empty space here, I can create a new group, and there we'll see a new group, and there's a drop-down menu. And let's just remove that group for the moment. And I can right click directly on a button, and I can add a new button, and then we can assign it. And I'll right click and remove that button just for the moment. And then another thing I can do is right click again in an empty space and create a whole new page. And you'll notice that this is empty now, but if we look at the far left, we'll see the various pages that exist. And there's our new page that we just created. There's the global one, but let's go back to the new page, and single clicking will bring up that menu to switch between pages, but right clicking will allow me to maybe remove that page if I want to do that and revert back to the default display. So let's look at adding a new button. I'm going to right click and I can add new button. Now, if I add a new menu button, it's going to be like one of these with the drop down list of multiple commands, which is great also. But let's just add a regular new button for the moment. Now here I can right click and in the assign column, assign one of the existing macros, or I can create a new command. So for example, I can right click and assign this to a new command, and I'll get the keyboard shortcuts that come up, and I can select any of these. Maybe I'll go to merge audio part, and let's just go OK. And there it is. There's my button for that. So that's not a macro. That's just a simple command, and it can live here happily ever after, and that would be the end of it. But I can do several other things. I'm going to right click and I can move it to one of the other pages, and you'll see these pages here that correspond to the pages we saw over there. And on each page, we have these different subheaders or sections. Now, in addition to moving it, I can reassign this. I can make it, let's say, an action where it becomes another button or drop-down menu with access to all of these various actions. Now, if I right-click and reassign this to name, we get a drop-down field with a bunch of potential names. So, for example, I have this synth bass set up. I can go to maybe bass here. I'll call this bass DI. Fun, and changes the name there. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo. Now let's just remove this button and start from scratch again. We'll look at doing macros. So I'm going to right click there and I'm going to go assign new macro. So now we have this macro editing window. So let's say I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to give it a name to start with, and I'm going to assign it to a group. So this is where it'll appear in the action menu. And I can describe what it does, but I'll leave that blank for now. Now I can scroll around to search for what I want, but I'm going to just type in what I'm looking for. Loop selection, that's the first thing I want. It's an action, so I'm going to add that. And this is going to be performed in the order. The next one I want is to activate. This is going to be for when I'm listening back to, let's say, track layers. And I'm going to go activate next layer. Let's add that one next. And then after that, I'm going to solo that layer. Let's add that one. And then finally, I'm going to go play from loop start. Let's add that one in, and we'll click OK. So now I have a new macro for auditioning layers. When I use this function, it'll select the next layer, solo it, set a loop point, and play it. So there's the new button that I created with that macro action. I'm not going to press it for now. But if we look in the action menu, we're going to see it's grouped under comping. And there it is. Now, let's say I've tried this out a few times and I realized I want to edit this macro. I want to change something or other in it. I can right click, go edit macro, and there I can select that, remove it, move something up and down, change the order, do whatever I need to. And furthermore, let's say I like that macro and I want one that's kind of the same thing but does something a little different. So I can right click it and go duplicate macro. Now I've got a duplicate of it, number 2, and then I can edit this one. And maybe I want to change this one to maybe go to the previous layer rather than the next one or something like that. So that's great. But let's say I'm in the heat of tracking. I've recorded a bunch of layers and I want to quickly audition the same section over and over. And I don't want to keep reaching up for this button to go back and forward. I can assign key commands to that. I'm going to go under Studio 1, Keyboard Shortcuts. And here I'm going to type in macros to get started to show me my macros. And if I look alphabetically, it's called EK Audition. And there it is. And I didn't rename the second one, but I can, of course, give these more meaningful names like Audition and Solo, next layer, Audition and Solo, previous layer, something like that. But the idea is that I can select these and assign key commands the way we would normally assign any key command, like clicking in here, entering key combination, something like that. I put all three modifiers with the letter E and go assign and then OK. I'm not going to assign it for right now, but that's how you would do it. I'm going to click cancel. Now we know that we can move these macros to other pages and to specific areas on the other pages, but we can also upload and share them on PreSonus Exchange. And to get to that, let's go under Studio One. We'll go to Macro Organizer. If we go Show Macros folder in Explorer or Finder, it'll open up the enclosing subfolder. And here we can see it's in my Users folder, Documents, Studio One. There's a Macros folder. There are all the factory macros, and my custom one should be in alphabetical order. There they are. So there's a whirlwind tour of the macro and the toolbar. I suggest spending some time getting comfortable and using the factory settings and see how they can serve your workflow. And then over time, you'll figure out how you can develop your own in ways that are useful for you. We'll see you for more in the next video.